you frustrated, uncomfortable, tired, and just plain confused with all that conflicting health advice out there? Feeling like you must be broken because nothing works or sticks? Well, don't throw in that towel just yet. I'm here to tell you that you are not broken or destined to be unhealthy, tired, or sick the rest of your life. Hey, I'm Jolene, a nutritional therapy practitioner and your BFF on this crazy wild ride. Here at Holistic Health Made Simple, we stop focusing on the scale and size and take small steps to reach those healthy dreams. We combine ancestral wisdom, science, and good old common sense to find what health looks like for us. Grab some water, pop in those headphones, and let's do this. Hey there. Wow. 2024 is just about done. There is less than 2 months left at the time this episode airs. It's the first week of November. It is so crazy, but this time of year also leads us to holidays. But it also leaves us reflecting and assessing where we're at. Now, I know a lot of you did awesome and you stuck to your diet and you stuck to the rules, and that's amazing. And then there's others who have been struggling. And you know what? The fact that you're still here and still trying, that is amazing. No matter where you're at and which side you're on, or if you're somewhere in the middle, it's the time of year that as we assess and evaluate, we need to really look inward if what we are doing is something that's going to get us to the finish line. Now, the finish line isn't just a number on the scale. If you've been here at any length of time, you know I'm all about getting healthy on the inside, getting those metabolic numbers good and staying good. What does that entail? Now, we all know it entails something different for each and every one of us. But what I'm seeing far too often is that we're following a diet. We're listening to the dogma of the diet, the rules of the diet, and we're not quite there. So we try to diet harder rather than smarter. Harder means more restrictions. Smarter means looking at what our body needs and adapting and ditching the dogma for health. And when it comes to health, it's those metabolic numbers. But beyond that, it's our happiness, our mental health, our desire to fit in at a dinner table when we're with a bunch of people, coworkers. And I know some of you don't care and you're strong in your resolve of being whatever you're doing. I get that. However, is it working for you? What do you do when what you're doing stops working? And I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of actual diets. What I'm looking here for is to empower you to think outside the box. And that, yes, there are people that stick to these very ultra restrictive diets, but it's not that many. And honestly, I've even noticed some that have stuck to it for years realized they needed to tweak their diet and their sources of nutrition because their body was missing out on nutrients. Not macronutrients necessarily, micronutrients. Some macronutrients is pretty specific, but the micronutrients. Looking at your food and the nutrient density of it is important. Looking at what you're eating and what it's doing to your gut health is even more important. We all know the majority of our health lives in our gut. And when we go on an ultra restrictive diet, no matter if it's vegan or carnivore, keto, paleo, whatever it is, we've got to make sure we're feeding our gut microbiome. And by feeding it, we're not overdoing it either, because like a vegan will have lots of fibers that will feed the gut microbiome, but sometimes it overreacts because it's too much. It's too much of certain things that throw the gut out of balance, the bacteria balance. We know there's trillions of quadrillions of different species of gut bugs inside of us, and we don't want to throw any one out of balance. Now, being a vegan can actually throw them out of balance. Being a carnivore throws them out of balance. Both of those diets, and their extreme polar opposites, changes the makeup of the gut microbiome. Now, many in the vegan world have digestive issues because they're getting so much plant matter, their body's struggling to digest it. Now, those in the carnivore world aren't getting any plant matter, and they feel like they don't have any digestive issues and their gut's perfect because they've omitted all the offending foods, and the minute they have a little bit, they get gut problems because both sides, same thing with the vegan, if they started eating animal products, they'd have digestive issues, different digestive issues. When you eliminate certain foods altogether, being plant or animal, your body stops making the enzymes that break it down. So you're going to have some digestive problems until your body learns how to remake those enzymes so you can actually digest them. So when you're a vegan vegetarian, you get a lot of those oxalates in abundance. You get a lot of the lectins, the anti-nutrients that the carnivores say are killing you, and they're not getting any. So you got two extremes there. Now, when it comes to both, literally, you can count how many can actually stick to it without falling off at all. I'm not saying one's bad and one's good. I'm saying they're very different and they're very restrictive. And if you cannot stick to it, those are not the best diets for you. Omnivorous diet of whole foods primarily is probably the best way for the majority of the human population to go. While I'm starting to go off on a rant, I'm going to reel it back in because I really want to talk about making empowered choices. Now, veganism is very restrictive in a way, and carnivore is very restrictive in a different way. Neither one of them really leaves you empowered to find the best path for you. It removes foods that are trouble foods for you. That doesn't necessarily make your relationship with food better. Now, I'm a firm believer that if there's a certain food that you can't stop eating, it triggers binges, it triggers all sorts of things, that you probably should stay away from that. But it's often not a macronutrient. It's often certain foods, certain types of foods. And they often lead back to being foods that we grew up with and know as comfort foods. Maybe it's something your grandma made or your mom made or you and your mom used to share, or it was something you used to eat to hide whatever was happening in your life. Now, I've talked about it in a previous episode about how our past traumas often lead us to overeating or self-sabotage. And the new year is going to be really enlightening to a lot of us as we work through all of this. But for right now, let's work on empowering these last 2 months. As we get in situations where we might want to stress eat, to choose not to. As we get into situations where there's an abundance of sugary foods and we don't want to eat them, so we say no, or we avoided sugar for the past 6 months to a year and we choose to have a sliver of cake. Both are okay, but you have to figure out how you can gain control. As I've been on this journey of becoming a healthy person, it will always be a journey and it will always be becoming. But I'm learning that when I remove choice, life is easier. I'm not going to say it's not. But it's not helping my relationship because if something triggers me, I crave that nonstop. So part of my December challenge to everybody is to empower you to learn to make choices without the derailment. And I'm going to be honest with you, as I started this episode, not really sure that this is where I was going, but we'll go there. Empowering ourselves to make these choices, evolving as a person, growing as a person. We need to be in control of the food we put in our mouth. And there's lots of ways to look at it. Is this nourishing or is it not? And I know I probably said it before, sometimes we choose not. As long as the majority of the time we're choosing nourishment, that little bit of the time that we're choosing not is not a problem, as long as it doesn't turn into the majority of the time. And yes, I'm starting to feel like I'm talking in circles a little bit, but I guess what I'm trying to say is the dogma of diets and the belief that a diet works is good until the diet stops working. That's when we as humans have to learn how to empower ourselves to make the best choices. And also know that if we choose something that's cake, it's okay as long as we empowered ourselves to have one small piece of cake or big piece, whatever it is, but one piece of cake at one event and move on, and it doesn't derail us. That is learning to go beyond the food. That's the mental part. That is our relationship with food. We don't need the cake. Nobody needs cake. Cake is never going to be healthy. But building a healthy relationship with food sometimes does involve food that's not healthy. You might be wondering where all this is coming from. And I think it's years of things that have built up inside of me. Years of people putting fear of different foods to me, upon me. I lived for a very long time in the keto world. And I was very fearful to share the chocolate I ate because, one, I don't digest erythritol. And back when I started low carb and keto, there wasn't any chocolate that either didn't have erythritol and didn't have sugar. It had one or the other. And I searched and searched and searched, and I found a chocolate that had very low sugar. It was all organic. It was really clean. But I was terrified of sharing it because, oh my God, it had sugar. It made me feel guilty. That's not healthy. It made me feel less than a failure. But, I don't need chocolate. I like chocolate. Chocolate helped me get through some stressful times at times. As a female, some times of the month, we just want a small piece of chocolate. Like, I never overdid it. I still don't overdo it. But I realize as I'm looking back on this past 8 years of my health journey, I only got so far. And then I started backsliding, mostly because I had this fear and the things weren't working. And then I doubled down. And then I did this. And then life threw me a major curveball. And here I am today, gathering all my healthy habits. That's what I lean on. But the ones that are sustaining me are not keto habits. They're not vegetarian habits, even though I was never a vegetarian because, let's be honest, I like my meat. But I've been falling back on whole foods as much as possible. The problem is when I'm stressed, when life throws me curveballs, I often don't eat enough. And that's a problem. And that's also where I learned that calorie counting doesn't always work. It's not always about calories in, calories out. It's about fueling your body and nutrient density, people, nutrient density. We'll be talking a lot about nutrient density. And when you're in a period of stress, for whatever reason, learning to put some of those healthy habits aside. The biggest habit I am working on unlearning, and it's definitely hard because my body's trained to have adapted to it is intermittent fasting. I am at a point in my health, for my age, for the stage of perimenopause I'm in, for the stage of stress I have, is that I need to stop intermittent fasting and eat 3 whole meals a day. And you know what? I struggle with breakfast. Now, some of you are going to say, well, if you're not hungry, don't eat. But if I'm not eating enough at lunch and I'm not eating enough at dinner, I need that 3rd meal. I need to get the nutrients in to fuel my body, to keep my body running healthy with that 3rd meal. You're going to tell me, just eat bigger 2 other meals. That doesn't always work. Eating enough protein as an aging female is my priority. And lately, I cannot get that in 2 meals. I need that 3rd meal. But all this is to say that we have to build the healthy habits, but we have to learn when to break them as well. Following the rules works when it's working. When it's not working, we need to unfollow the rules and make new ones for ourselves. For me right now, that means eating 3 meals a day, trying to get in a lot more vegetables so that I'm fueling my gut microbiome, making sure I'm getting enough healthy fats so that my hormones are working well. There is so much going on, but it is making sure I am prioritizing my protein, getting in my healthy fats, getting in enough vegetables, getting a nutrient-dense diet in. And then you know what? I can be empowered when I'm out and about and I can have that slice of whatever. Because the month of December, it's all about saying yes to sugar. And you're going to go, huh? Because that's what I said. We want to be empowered through the holidays to choose or choose not to indulge and be absolutely okay with it. So that requires 2 things: mentally being prepared, physically being prepared. Because like I say over and over and over again, if the majority of our diet is nutrient-dense whole foods, that little bit that's not does not undo all the stuff that we did with our nutrient-dense whole foods. Learning how to improve my relationship with foods, improving your relationship with foods, understanding that over-restriction is a form of control, but is it the right form of control to get us to a healthy relationship to food? We don't need junk food. We don't need all the toxic crap that's in our food. That is not what I'm talking about. There was a point in time in this world that people ate whole foods and that it included some sugar. Mom would make a cake. I mean, this was before my mom. My mom actually did make cakes from scratch. But they used to make cakes in the 60s and the 50s and the 40s from scratch. Not out of a box with all these chemicals in it. From scratch. Can you believe it? They got flour and eggs and all this stuff. That stuff is still whole foods because there's no chemicals in it. But I'm not telling you to go make us cake from scratch. That's not where I'm going. I know I'm going on some rants right now, but we need to get back to the way things were and get back to whole foods and making foods for ourselves most of the time so that that little bit of a time where it's not perfect, we're okay. You might be wondering how I got here. It was by looking around, looking at my friends, family, and how 2 people can eat the exact same thing and one have issues and one doesn't. Now, I'm not saying if you have health issues to go hog wild. What I'm saying is address your health in a way that's sustainable forever. A restrictive diet at some point is not going to be sustainable forever because your body's going to need other nutrients that you're not getting. It's going to adapt and downregulate or upregulate, whatever it is, to how you're eating for a long period of time. Our body is meant to be dual fueled, meaning we burn both fat for fuel and glucose for fuel. That is how we're built. And when we go from one extreme to the other, the opposite side weakens. of how we digest it, of how we process it, of how our body utilizes it. It doesn't mean that it's bad because we've gone vegan and all of a sudden we eat meat and get sick, or we've gone carnivore and all of a sudden we eat carbs and get sick. It means our bodies have adapted to what we're eating and needs to readapt to an omnivorous lifestyle. So to wrap things up a little bit and put a nice tidy bow, we're omnivorous. We need to eat a nutrient-dense diet, and we need to be empowered to make healthy choices as well as sometimes not so healthy choices. But that not so healthy choices by being empowered, meaning we have it and we move on. It is not something that we start adding in and day out. We are empowered to live a fulfilled life, enjoying our friends and family, and not always feeling like the oddball. It's okay not to eat things, but it's also okay to eat them as long as you're doing it in a healthy manner. So let's work on our relationship to food and our balance of nutrient density to make sure we are getting in all the macro and micro nutrients our bodies need to thrive. The goal on this is to become the healthiest version of us and to thrive. And for each one of us, that's going to be different. Some people can thrive on a vegan diet. Some people can thrive on a carnivore diet. The majority of us, it's somewhere in the middle. On that note, friends, I will see you next time. Be healthy. Bye. Thanks for listening. I hope you got some nuggets to take on your health journey. Remember, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. No medical advice is being given, and by listening to this podcast, you agree to the full disclaimer, which is linked in the show notes. You can stay connected by joining the newsletter over at holistichealthmadesimple.com, where I share additional tips and tricks weekly. Once again, thank you for being part of my community. Until next time, have a blessed day.